I always went to the same supermarket I'd gone to essentially my whole life. It was a ritual to swing by after work a few days each week and pick up dinner for the family, along with a few other groceries. I contemplated breakfast cereal choices as I stared at the same cracked vinyl tile in the same aisle I've stood in many times before, with the same old-school luminescent light bulbs flickering overhead. As much as it might have embarrassed me when I was younger to say, my guilty pleasure has always been sugary cereal. Ever since I was a kid, I've always been a fan of whatever had marshmallows in it, especially the ones everyone saw on TV. They're magically delicious, I thought to myself, while reminiscing of those old commercials, and opted to buy the name brand for once instead of the knockoffs that tasted half stale most of the time. I felt even more amused when I noticed the upper top label that promised a special surprise in that limited edition run of boxes. I normally wouldn't have gone for any of this, but my wife had already informed me that her and the kids would be having dinner with her parents that night, and not to expect them home before I went to bed. I usually left for my job at the walnut packing factory every morning at 4:30 a.m., so I usually tried to be in bed by 9:30. So I thought, why not just enjoy a bowl of cereal before bed on this particular evening? Truth be told, I'd lived out the usual cliche of marrying my high school sweetheart and never leaving the small town I'd grown up in. I'd planned to pursue a career as an engineer, but my collegiate career was cut short by baby number one when I was 19 years old. So, I did the right thing and got a job at the walnut processing factory, and just summed up the whole rest of my life with that. By the time the third kid had arrived, my one-time sweetheart was now constantly enraged by the sight of me. There were many nights that she and the kids, who were now teenagers and also disdained my existence, would simply choose to have dinner elsewhere. I was, at this point, the slob that paid the bills and was a hindrance to their joy in life, it seemed. I chuckled to myself as the acne-riddled cashier rang up the cereal, because I knew my wife would nag at me for daring to buy expensive cereal just for myself. As I loaded the groceries into my old Toyota, though, I thought that I heard a voice coming from one of the bags. I shook it off as the long day taking its toll on me, but then I swore that I saw a red glow in my back seat that I just happened to catch for a second in my rearview mirror. I can't explain why, but when I got home, I quickly found the box of cereal, opened and peeled the plastic bag open, started pouring myself a bowl. That's when I heard the little thunk and quickly remembered the promise of a surprise in every box. It too was wrapped in a little plastic baggie, and when I opened it, it kind of startled me. There was that familiar image, the shamrock green attire and top hat, along with the red hair sticking out from underneath that hat, the blank stare in its eyes as it faced forward, and an almost eerie grin that spread across its face in a far too natural way, all in a 5-inch tall figure. The thing creeped me out, if I'm being honest, so I shoved it into the spare kitchen drawer where we kept our batteries. I inadvertently hit the button I never realized was on the back side of the figurine. This caused the eyes to light up and a small recording to repeat, "They're magically delicious," in an Irish accent. I felt more than a little unnerved by the idea that that was supposed to be a children's toy, but I shrugged it off and proceeded to shut the drawer, as I downed not one, but 2 bowls of the marshmallowy goodness that night. After I finished, I headed out of the kitchen upstairs and paused to look towards the box of cereal. Thanks for a trip down memory lane and a nice treat, but I'm afraid your magic can't fix all my problems, before I continued upstairs towards my bedroom. I was only halfway up the stairs when I thought I heard something along the lines of, "Let's test your luck," and a dull red glow casting shadows from the kitchen. I was either extremely tired or I was losing it, so I admittedly jetted up the stairs, feeling a bit creeped out. Usually, I'd stay awake until I heard my family arrive downstairs on nights like this. Then I'd go to sleep. They might hate the sight of me, but I still felt the innate sense of ensuring they were safe. That night, though, I fell almost immediately into one of the deepest sleeps I'd ever experienced, and dreamt all night about things I'd long given up on. In my dreams, I was at a college out east somewhere, top of my class, and a top engineering job already waiting for me when I graduated. I also had a supermodel girlfriend who was pursuing a degree in fashion, and we were planning a weekend away together on the coast when a red glow overcame my dreams and an almost primal-sounding scream jolted me out of sleep. I reached over instinctively to check my wife. She wasn't there, which gave me a slight pause, but she was known to sleep in the spare bedroom when she felt especially annoyed by me. Still, that scream had me on edge, so I bolted out of bed and started down the stairs. That's when I heard the second scream and recognized it immediately as my oldest son. I darted down the stairs as fast as I could, and as I did, my nostrils were assaulted by the most metallic smell that I couldn't place in my state of panic at that moment. I saw a red glow come and go in waves in my descent, and then I swore I heard the sound of the most disgusting type of slurping noise, much like when a 4-year-old eats spaghetti. I ran straight around the corner towards the kitchen, but I slipped immediately on the tiles and slammed the back of my head on the landing. When I tried to get up, I kept slipping and losing my grip from something wet and slimy on the floor. I finally crawled to the light switch by the refrigerator, and when I turned it on, I yelled aloud when I realized the floor was covered in blood. Not just a little bit of blood either, it was literally everywhere in the kitchen, on the table, handprints on the cabinet and fridge, pools of it leading to the living room and onto the carpet. It wasn't just blood either. The viscera reminded me of the summers I spent at the local poultry processing as a teen. There was a piece of, well, something once living everywhere, and I looked in that kitchen along with shreds of clothing that I recognized as belonging to my wife. I started screaming for my family, but received no response. In a panic, I rushed all over the house, but I saw no evidence of any of them anywhere. That is, except for the blood and carnage that the entire house was covered in. I didn't want to believe what I knew the source of all of that was, though. I scrambled to find my cell phone that was tucked away in my jacket on the kitchen chair the night before and dialed 911. Right as I started to dial, though, I saw the red glow again. This time, I realized exactly where it was coming from. Not from the drawer any longer, but right in front of the kitchen table. The light intensified beyond what any reasonable person would believe possible for the figurine. Then I heard a familiar, distorted voice begin to play. "They're magically delicious." It was then that I realized that the grin on its face had dropped into an even deeper arc, and the figurine was absolutely coated in deep, red blood. To my astonishment, I realized now that I was actually seeing its plastic mouth break free of its natural boundaries, and its lips began to move as it repeated itself. "Ahem, I said they were magically delicious." I yelled at him with the most fear and rage a being could ever muster up within themselves, and asked where my family was. "Your wish was my command, my friend. You're free man now, so let's say you and I go find what's at the end of the rainbow, eh? Besides, they truly were magically delicious." You're still here. Thanks so much for joining us for tonight's spooky tale. If you'd like a little bit more spooky in your life, why not click on one of the videos that appears at the end of our story, or maybe head on over to one of our playlists where you can get your fill of spooky content. If you like your spooky a little more tactile, I've got a new book that's come out. If you'd like your own copy, there's a link below in the description where you can get your own copy of my spooky book. If you like what you see here on the channel and think you might like to support in a more monetized way, then why not come over to Patreon or become a member on YouTube? Speaking of, let's go ahead and thank our members now. Thanks to Civ Garstad, Unicorn Hollow, and Heather for being our Spooky Ghost contributors. Thanks to Janet, Lee Kendall, Saikat, Ronda J, Sue Casper, and Valinator for being our Spooky Skeleton tier contributors. And thanks to Hi Stacy, Winter, Xaronan, Stephanie Carrington, Tyler Parker, Cinnamon Fox, and Sarah Samar 42 for being our Ghostly Reader tier contributors. Thanks, everyone. We just couldn't do the show without you. If you too would like to support the show, we always tell you to come on down to Patreon or check out my member section on YouTube. Spooky Skeleton contributors get their video 12 hours earlier at 8:30 a.m. as opposed to 8:30 p.m. And Ghostly Readers get a book every time I write one on their doorstep. There's actually one coming up here in a few weeks, so if you'd like to get in on that, please go ahead and sign up. And as always, thanks for stopping by. Dr. Plague, signing off. Have a wonderful evening.